Hey everybody, welcome to Victims and Villains. We are your Marvel correspondents. I'm Alan.
I'm Josh.
And today we're going to be talking about Morbius. Let's get into it. Do you want to take point on this or?
Well, sure. Actually, you know what?
Things we should have talked about before we started streaming. Yeah.
Yeah, we've been late last year. We were dubbed the Marvel correspondents for Victims and Villains. And we were like, oh, yeah, we've got like Spider-Man coming up. We got Morbius right after that. Doctor Strange right after that. And then Morbius was just pushed again.
Yeah.
I think this has been pushed like for a couple years now. And we've all, me and you have just been kind of waiting like, oh, just release it already so we can have something to talk about.
I was very convinced that this film was not ever going to come out. I thought it was going to be an It was going to be an April Fool's Day joke. I can confirm now that Morbius is an actual movie. Because we have both just gotten home from the theaters, and we're like, hey, let's not wait until Sunday. I want to talk about this now. So here we are.
Right. When was this film originally supposed to come out? Because I feel like it's like a couple years.
I remember the first trailer dropped in January 2020.
Okay, I'm just looking it up. It's supposed to drop. Yeah, you're right. It was supposed to premiere in July of 2020, and I to your credit, I always believed that this movie existed. However, I don't believe that the movie we saw tonight was the movie we would have seen in July of 2020. It felt incredibly cut up. I'm not even going to get into spoilers, but this felt like a part of a movie.
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
And at the same time, I'm also incredibly surprised because, again, without spoilers, we've seen so many trailers for this movie. So many trailers, and yet somehow, I'll give Sony all the credit, somehow they still kept a good chunk of this movie out of the trailers. Like when parts of this movie came about, I was like, oh, I did not know that this was going to be a part of the movie, and that was kind of surprising and refreshing to me, and I actually appreciated that.
Yeah, when I did the spoiler-free review that I recorded before we decided we were going live, I had to like not say some stuff because there are things that they kept out of the marketing for this movie that were very well hidden. But there were also things in the marketing that make no sense to the movie that we saw. So
Correct. I believe a lot of those things were for a cut that probably would have dropped in July of 2020. And then other choices were made, and then probably more choices were made because I remember in 2021 reading an article and seeing an interview where Michael Keaton said, oh yeah, I just went back and filmed a bunch more stuff for Morbius. So, I mean, it seems like there was a 2020 cut, and there was a cut that they were working on in 2021, and now there's a post Spider-Man No Way Home cut.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised if those were three significantly different cuts.
Yeah, I remember Keaton on Kimball talking about, I got to go shoot some Vulture stuff after they just spent like 5 minutes talking about him shooting Batman stuff. He's like, yeah, now I got to go over to Marvel and shoot some Vulture, which I have a theory on that, which we'll get into in spoilers. But I don't think it's a spoiler to say Michael Keaton's in the movie because he's in the trailers. Like that's the one consistent thing in the trailers was Michael Keaton. So
I haven't seen all of the trailers. I've seen up until, whatever they put in front of No Way Home. I think there was one more trailer post that I have not seen. There is an actor that I won't mention until we get into spoiler talk who's a main part of this story that I did not know was in this film. And maybe that's just because I wasn't paying attention. But he's a significant part of this film. And I was like, oh, wow, okay. Well, they did a good job hiding that because I had no idea.
Yeah, I know exactly who you're talking about, too. So I'm not trying to be rude and look at my phone. I'm just pulling up the chat so we can see if anyone's chatting with us while we talk. Because the way I have it set up, I don't have it popping into OBS. So, I should probably turn that down. All right, so keeping it spoiler free for a bit, what were your general overall thoughts and feelings of Morbius 2022 cut?
Oh, is that what we're drinking out of? I should go get my Justice League cup. It's right
That's what
over
I
there.
have.
um, uh, so, and this is why I wanted to talk about it tonight, because I didn't want these thoughts to leave my head. By the time Sunday rolls around, I believe that this film, and this might be controversial, but I believe this film is better than Venom 2 and on par with Venom 1. I am not a fan of either of the Venom movies. However, I believe that that's my best way of describing this. It's no, I told you earlier this week and last week that, man, people are just talking about this. I heard the director was just going off on it on Twitter. I heard half of the movie is spoiled. I heard all those things and I actively tried to avoid them because I didn't want the movie spoiled for me. So outside of what was seen in the trailers, there was even some, like, I heard there was a transformation clip that was released online like a month ago. I avoided that. So I went into this film as cold as I possibly could, having watched, I believe, 2 trailers. And without getting into spoilers, the first, like, maybe 20, 25 minutes of it, I thought it was fine. I was like, this is moving at a very breakneck pace. It's definitely going through the things that we saw over and over again in the trailers. And I'm like, at this pace, I wonder what the rest of this movie is going to be, because I feel like we're getting through the stuff I've already seen, and we're fastly approaching the stuff that I haven't seen yet. And it was at about that point that the film started to go downhill for me. But the first maybe 20, 25 minutes of it, I was like, this isn't great. It's not MCU standards, but it's certainly watchable, especially as a matinee. I paid matinee price. And, I thought it was certainly watchable, the first half of it. The second half wasn't terrible, but it was less watchable than the first half.
I have a hard time. I agree that this is better than Venom 2. But I think it is just on par with Venom. What I like more about the Venom story is you have that dynamic between Eddie and Venom as a duo, like as a odd couple. So they can bounce off of each other. Morbius is pretty much on his own this whole film and doesn't really get to, like, I never really felt any of the connections between him and any of the other characters. Like, all those relationships, they kind of just throw at you and see what sticks, but I never really felt a connection between him and anyone in the film. And I think part of that was because of the breakneck pace of the especially the first 25 minutes. Like, there's a whole, it's slight spoilers, but he wins the Nobel Prize and then rejects it, but you don't get to see him reject it. You just get to hear about it after the fact. Like, I want to see that. Like, if he's taking a moral stand, like not taking the Nobel Prize for something that he created by accident, then I want to see that. Like, that's more interesting to me than just seeing a Daily Bugle headline about it. That shows me who this character is and what he believes. Instead, we're just like, why'd you do this, Michael? Like, what were you thinking? Like, it's
a kid saying that to him.
Yeah.
I agree. I think that goes back to what I was saying, is that I feel like this movie was severely cut up. Like, this movie came in at, I'm trying to see what the runtime was on this Morbius runtime. This movie came in at 1 hour and 44 minutes, which I think is only like a handful of minutes long. Venom 2 was an hour and 37 minutes. So this is 7 minutes longer than that. And I said the same thing about Venom 2. It felt like it was filmed as a longer film, and then Sony came in and said, we want it as close to an hour and a half as possible. Doesn't matter if it doesn't make sense. Doesn't matter if there's not enough build-up between the villains. We get it done. I thought that there was so much in this that proved or that hinted at a larger plot. Like, I there was Tyrese's character had something going on with his arm, like a I don't know, a metallic thing on his arm. They redubbed one of his lines about how Morbius saved his life at one point with his synthetic blood. He clearly says something else. There's a lot more footage of him in the trailers than there are in the movie.
Yeah.
That's that stuff. And like you said, these other relationships that he has, they all felt like they were clips from a longer film, and this is like the even worse than the TV cut that most, normally when you see a movie on TV, a lot of it's cut out. This felt like a TV cut on steroids, but we saw it in the theater.
Yeah.
Which was jolting at times.
What do you think Sony's reasoning behind the hour and a half Marvel movie is? Like, I can't see any rhyme or reason to it.
I don't know. The most logical answer would be more showtimes a day, especially on these clearly lesser characters. This isn't a Spider-Man. This isn't an Iron Man. They know they're pulling from the B or C tier of characters and hoping that they will flip them into a more popular character. But that's the only thing I can think of is faster show times. You can get more shows per day per theater, and then maybe down the line, if it picks up, releasing an extended cut, and then getting the extra fanfare that way.
Yeah, because part of me is like, well, maybe they're doing this so they can release those extended cuts on home video and get money that way, but they haven't done that yet. Maybe they will, but because I have a hard time believing that this film wasn't almost complete when it got pushed back in 2020. Like, I'm sure whatever deleted scenes are there are complete and just sitting on the cutting room floor.
Oh, I 100% believe that. I 100% believe that. And again, knowing that this was supposed to come out in July of 2020, Venom 1 came out in 2018. This was spot-on-spot formula for Venom 1. Down to and I won't get into spoilers, but down to the fight scenes. If you go back and watch Venom 1, there was so much, Venom, slime, and shit all over the screen. You couldn't see anything for most of the fights until they freeze-framed it and super slowed it down. Same thing with this. When there is fighting, you can't see anything. You cannot. There's whole set pieces that I don't even know what it is until they stop moving and you realize they're in a totally different, spot. Or when they super slow down, freeze framed it, and so it felt like they were making the same movie, except with that inner monologue thing, and it was definitely like a Spider-Man type thing, like weak individual gets powers, gets abs. And things ensues, but yeah. In terms of, can I just say, in terms of Jared Leto, if you're not a Jared Leto fan, this movie isn't gonna win you over. So everybody going into this and coming out saying, I hated it because it's got Jared Leto. Well, if you walked into it hating Jared Leto, did you think it was gonna change your mind? I don't mind Jared Leto. I think in some performances he's been great. I like his band. I loved Blade Runner 2049. So I went into this movie prepared for a Jared Leto performance, and that's what I got. So whatever conflicts I have with the film, it's not really because of Jared Leto, because I kind of already had that, preferenced in my mind. I kind of knew what to expect from him.
So I'm not really a big Jared Leto fan, but he kind of won me over in this. Like, I enjoyed him in this a lot more than I did in like Suicide Squad. Because I was worried that it was going to be a little bit too over the top, but I actually liked his performance in this. It didn't seem like it was too much. It seemed good for the story they were telling and for this character. It kind of won me over on Jared Leto a bit. So I
think he's fine. I think I think he's had better performances than this. I think if there's anything wrong with his character in the movie, it's in the writing, not necessarily his performance. He's, you know, when you think of long-haired, pale-looking, eccentric actor, you think of Jared Leto. He's done this role in several other movies before. This isn't a stretch for him, so it certainly wasn't a stretch to put him into this character. Had you tried to place him into like a super charismatic, outward-going, sarcastic role like Tony Stark, I would be like, no way in hell. But
Mm-hmm.
Morbius, especially in the story that they crafted around the character, he fit just fine. It wasn't a detractor for me at all.
Yeah. No, I think the cast in this was good. But I think some choices were felt a bit wasted.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Um,
Trying to think what else I can say without going into spoilers. Um, Special effects, the vampire effects were about, I mean, half and more than half and half. The first time you see a lot of the effects, I was like, that's pretty good. That
yeah.
blends pretty well. I think in it really until like the final fight scene, the majority of the effects were pretty darn good. Um, or a PG-13 vampire film. Now,
Yeah.
if you're comparing this to an R-rated vampire film, you are going to be let down because this
Oh
is
yeah.
not, you know, down to the point where they try to replace red blood with blue blood for the majority of the film in order to keep the rating down. Not it's not real blue blood, it's a whole subplot, we'll get into it,
Yeah.
but they make very specific choices to make this as PG-13 as possible, including the violence. We do see blood at times, but most of the times we just hear the blood. We don't actually see the blood.
Yeah.
Uh, but in terms of the special effects for the transformations, and sometimes they're just like that, like his face will change and then change back. And outside of the final fight, I was like, they did well. They blended this pretty darn well, and I was happy with it.
Yeah, I was happy with the film. Looks amazing. Uh, the story it leaves you wanting, but it looks good. Uh, I talked a bit in my spoiler-free review about the use of the color purple, not only in the title
Oh,
sequences, but like when he's like, especially towards that final fight, like the color,
mm-hmm.
the purple flying off of him, like that's not one you usually see in the superhero films. It's usually red or blue or yellow, but purple, it was a nice change of pace.
Yeah. And anybody who knows me knows I'm a huge fan of purple. It's like all over my marketing for my books and all that, and I love purple. So,
Yeah.
from the opening, just the opening like title sequence, I'm like, I'm digging this. It had a very comic book. It had a very like '90s comic book appeal to it. Um,
It
uh,
felt it felt like an early 2000s Marvel movie.
oh yeah, for
Um,
sure. It definitely did not feel like a MCU film. It felt like a Sony byproduct film, and um, I think there's multiple parties to blame for that. If you're going into this wanting an MCU style film in terms of plot, in terms of universe building, in terms of overall quality, you're shooting yourself in the foot by expecting that because this is not Disney Marvel. This is Sony Marvel,
yeah.
and I don't 100% blame Sony for that. I do blame Disney for that a lot because we've seen the amazingness that can happen when Sony and Disney play together in the same sandbox. No Way Home is
Mhm.
amazing. The entire modern Spider-Man trilogy is amazing. We've seen them do good things. And while I'm sure part of it, we can talk all day about contracts and all the restrictions and Sony wants to do their own thing. They don't want a babysitter and Disney's got so much on their plate. They don't have time to babysit. I really do feel like if they worked a little harder together, it would benefit both. you know.
Yeah.
But because Disney let well, it's not that they let, it's that they didn't. I don't know who makes the decisions, but because Sony was primarily involved with Venom and nobody really criticized Venom 1. Venom 1 was highly praised despite it having a lot of technical flaws and a lot of plot flaws that I didn't care for. Nobody really said, this could have been better. They just said, ooh, Venom looked cool. Well, then they took that exact same formula and made this movie. It's just that now we're getting it because it's been delayed so many times.
Yeah.
This is the consequence of them not, of people not being more critical of Venom, in my mind.
I'm curious to see if the relationship between Disney Marvel and Sony Marvel changes from here on out, because we have had 3 Spider-Man movies under both roofs, that maybe the relationship will change going on, because this is something that was already made like around this was probably done production by the time Spider-Man Far From Home came out. Like they were probably wrapping up shooting because the trailer came out in January of 2020. So they were filming this when they were already done with the second Spider-Man film. So I'm curious to see, like, with the other films that they have in the Sony Marvel universe, which the only one I can think of right now is Kraven the Hunter coming in the pipeline next. I'm curious to see if they have a bigger connection with a little bit more oversight from Disney, or if Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios just like, you do you, like, just go and do what you got to do.
Yeah. It just feels like more style, less substance.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I thought that the Venom, while I can't deny that certain parts of Venom are really cool stylistically, especially when you compare modern day Venom to, like, a Spider-Man 3 Venom. They've definitely got the style down, but for me, the substance was never there. The story was never there. I never felt connected to the characters, and I felt that they just completely threw Carnage under the bus and ruined the potential for that matchup. And this, it's got a ton of style, but it was really lacking in substance. And whether that substance was all on the cutting floor, or it just saw that you didn't need a lot of substance for people to like Venom, so let's repeat that with another character. I don't know, but
yeah.
I think that just leads more into spoiler talk.
Yeah. Overall, how would you rate Morbius on the Rorschach scale?
I mean, I paid $6 to see it at a matinee. It wasn't a complete waste of time. I would say like 2.5 out of 5, like a good middle of the road mark for me.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go slightly lower and say a 2.
Okay.
Because it looks cool. Jared Leto's okay, but overall, this film is a bit of a mess. And I don't think especially when you get into spoiler talk and things that happen after the film too, just don't help it at all. So I think with that, we need to get into our spoiler talk. So if you have not seen Morbius yet, because it just came out like an hour and a half ago, or if you don't care to go see Morbius and you just want to know everything that happens, stay tuned, because we are getting into spoilers with our spoiler logo popping up now. So, all right, where do you want to start with spoilers?
Well, let's leave the mid credits to later on.
Oh yeah,
I do want to talk about the villain, who is played by Doctor Who himself,
Matt Smith.
Matt Smith. Did you know going into this film that Matt Smith was going to be in the film?
I did. He's in one shot of the trailer that I kept seeing in front of Spider-Man No Way Home.
Okay. Well, I did not, and I guess I just missed it. Maybe I just wasn't interested enough in the trailer to see it. When I saw him in the movie, I was surprised, and I thought this is going to be one of two things. This is going to be like the whole part of the movie that I had no idea was about. This is going to be the main villain. He's going to be a significant role in the film, or this is going to be another Terminator Genesis,
yeah.
yeah, where he was like in the marketing for that. He was like in part of the first scene, and then that was it. Then you're like, wait, was he in the film, or did they just like Photoshop him in there?
Yeah.
But no, the story clearly set him up as Milo because they didn't want to call him Lucian for some reason. I don't know if that's a comic thing, like a deep reference. I'm not a Morbius guy. The only Morbius stuff I've ever seen is Spider-Man the Animated Series, so I don't know what the history behind the name thing is, but I was like, okay, they're setting him up to be the villain. And by the time he does switch to be the villain, it was like that. Like I wanted a little more build up. I knew it was going there, but then it was so jarring and it was so quick. It didn't hold a lot of weight for me.
That was one of the most interesting things about the movie was they don't show him turn into the villain. The way they reveal it kind of took me by surprise. Like I just like, oh, that's a clever way of just doing that because he frames Michael for a murder. And Michael thinks he did it because he thinks he lost control again. I was like, oh, it kind of intrigued me. Like that's something we haven't quite seen done before. It's like, that's an interesting way to like, to do the reveal and then have him Kaiser Soze walk out of the prison without his cane. So.
Oh yeah. That was so like, Edward Norton, in that one, there's that reminded me of like 3 different movies of him walking out of the prison in a changed role. I didn't understand why he did it because the whole scene of him begging his friend for the serum felt so much like Amazing Spider-Man 2 for me, with Harry begging Spider-Man for, like, it was almost word for word that scene. And then so I guess he swiped the serum on his way out, took it, even if he was mad that Morbius didn't want to just give it to him. I don't understand how it went from we've been friends all our lives and you've disappointed me to I'm going to frame you for murder. I'm going to take the serum somewhere else, go through the whole change, then come back to your workplace and kill your coworker and then leave. It didn't make a lot of sense to me. Like if there was a whole speech that followed up with like, I need to teach you a lesson, there was none of that. It just happened. I was like, okay, that was a kind of a clever twist, but in hindsight, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
I think part of it was he felt entitled to it because he's the one paying for the experiments. Like he's the one in charge. That's his company. So, which I was trying to figure out, like how he goes from being the sick kid in Greece to the owner of like this multi-million-dollar tech company in New York.
If you or someone you know is listening to this podcast right now and you're struggling with suicide, addiction, self-harm, or depression, we encourage you guys to please reach out. This is the heartbeat of why we do what we do. Suicide is currently the 10th leading cause of death in the United States, and as of this recording, there are 132 suicides that take place each and every day on American soil. And when you scale back internationally, there are 800,000 successful suicides. That is one death roughly every 40 seconds. So if you or someone you know is struggling, you guys can go to victimsandvillains.net/hope. That resource is going to be right in the description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this. There you'll find resources that include the National Suicide Lifeline, which is 1-800-273-8255. You can also text HELP to 741-741. We also have a plethora of other resources, including churches, getting connected with counselors, LGBT resources like the Trevor Project, and also veteran hotline as well. Please, if you hear nothing else in the show, understand that you listening to this right now, have value and worth. We get it. Suicide, depression, mental health, these are hard topics, and the stigma around them doesn't make it any easier. But please consider the resources right in the descriptions below wherever you guys are listening, because once again, you have value and you have worth. So please stay with us.
Yeah, they never.
Yeah.
There's a lot of jumping all over the place.
Yeah.
Somehow we get from Greece to New York. I didn't really understand that either.
Oh, yeah, and I didn't
Not only did they relocate, but the doctor relocated and everything.
And I don't understand why Greece. Like Greece, because Jared Harris is not Greek. His dad was Dumbledore, for crying out loud. He's not a Greek man. So
yeah, it was just, I don't know if that's a comic book reference. It was just like a weird, like, oh, let's pick one random cool place to start, and then we'll never reference that again.
Mm-hmm.
We'll stick to very English speaking characters there that are clearly not from there, and they're not going to stay there, and then we'll never talk about it again. Yeah, it was weird. It was a weird set piece for some reason.
Yeah.
But I did, I liked their friendship. I liked the parts before the turn that we saw with them, taking a walk and being friends all this time. I did like that buildup.
But at the same time, it's the exact same thing that we saw in Amazing Spider-Man 2. They go on a walk, they sit down, and they have this conversation, and you can, like, they lean into their friendship, and then all of a sudden it just turns, and they're no longer friends. And it's just like...
It's had everything but the skipping rock scene. Yeah, it was very much the same film. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess Sony's just, like, copying pasting from their previous movies at this point. The only thing that was missing was a Bruce Campbell cameo.
Yeah, but okay, so anyway, he becomes the bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
He starts killing just to kill. He goes straight for the red,
Mm-hmm.
whereas Morbius goes for the blue at first, and that was reminded me so much of Daybreakers. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
I have
film.
not.
Ethan Hawke, Sam Neill, Willem Dafoe vampire film about synthetic blood, and it is a great film. I love the film, very underrated. But they just threw in this thing like, oh, he created blue blood. Like, that was just a very, like, minor thing that's a pretty big deal, and it is even mentioned once when Tyrese is like, yeah, you saved my life in Afghanistan, and that's clearly not what he says. It's way bad dubbed, but that's I think the only reason that was in this film was so that we could have a little less blood on screen. But it's not like he never drinks red blood, because Morbius does do red blood from time to time throughout the film.
I feel like if we had seen the Nobel Prize speech, the blue blood would have made more sense throughout the film. It just feels like a MacGuffin to be there. But I feel like if we knew the story on, like, how it was created and why he didn't feel like he deserved the Nobel Peace Prize for it, or the prize for science, or whatever it was, like, I feel like it would have made more sense, because from my understanding, like, he was working on a cure and he created that blood, and it didn't work the way he wanted it to, but it worked for all these other different reasons. And that's why he won this prize that he rejects. But I really wanted to see that scene, because it would have done so much more for me to, like, connect with that character and understand where he's coming from and what his motivations are with the cure and how long he's been working on it and why there's so much blue blood in his freezer.
And why he seemingly has, like, an entire floor of a building to himself, and a whole, like, tube full of bats that somehow people didn't know about for part of the film. And
a Zordon tube full of bats.
Yeah, he's got so much. It's this giant lab. Like, it looks like it's almost an entire floor of a building or half a building. And I would have liked some more. I don't need to have everything spoon-fed to me, but when you're introducing a new character, the only reason I was able to move through the breakneck pace of the first 25 minutes of the film was because I've seen everything in the trailer so many times. Every time I went to the theater, every time I forgot to turn off ad blocker when I was on YouTube, I would see this trailer over and over and over again. So it wasn't that I knew the character, it's that I'd seen the scenes. So I was like, all right, we can get through this. Just gets to the point where I haven't seen it yet. But I would have liked to grow a little bit more into there, explain a little bit more who this person is and his connection to the gal and to his co-workers and the impact of blue blood on the world and the difference between this world and our world, because it's not the same as the MCU. It's a different universe, which they've made clear.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, yeah, they cut out all the Spider-Man stuff that was in the trailers, but they left the Venom part in.
Yeah.
And I'm like, is Venom like widely known? Because even in the Venom movies, it's not that known. It's not like Venom is on TV or something. So it was kind of weird to me that this was going to come out after the first Venom and before the second Venom, and people knew who Venom was. So it didn't make sense to me.
So the way I explain that away with Sony Marvel logic is I assume Venom has become like an urban legend. Like all these dead bodies showed up in San Francisco. There's this creature called Venom that did it. And so Jared Leto just uses that like internet folklore, so like, that's why when he breaks into the other lab, he's like, I am Venom. Like, I think that's where that comes from. But yeah, you're right. Like, it doesn't make much sense, like, that people know who Venom is, and it makes sense for the cops to know, or the FBI. Like, that makes sense. But for him to just be going around name dropping Venom seems weird in New York.
Is that who they were? Was Tyrese and that other guy FBI?
I think so.
I don't know if they ever actually said who they worked for, and the whole time I was like, at first I thought they were like Coast Guard agents because of the ship, and I think, okay, and then they showed up in the city.
I could be wrong, but I think when they showed up on the ship, they said the FBI. That they were FBI. Wow. So that's my, because I don't see the NYPD go like until the boat washes up on shore.
They weren't cops.
Yeah, but
they're clearly agents, and I thought they weren't saying who they were because they were going to reveal like some secret organization later in the film, and it just doesn't happen.
Like the Sony Marvel universe still has S.H.I.E.L.D., but MCU doesn't.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so all the Spider-Man things from the trailer were either removed from the film or, call me crazy, but I don't think they were ever in the film to begin with. I think
just filmed for.
I think that explains why the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man art from the Spider-Man game was in the trailer. Like, they just copy and pasted from something to get Spider-Man's image in there. There's no shots.
That was in the first trailer. That was way back then.
Yeah, that was pre-coronavirus. Like that was what was on the internet. I don't think that was it. I think that was all just a marketing ploy to get people into to see the movie.
Well, probably. Because no, you're not. It's not actually. Yeah, the more I think about it, yeah, because you just said it. Because this came out a year after Far From Home. So Far From Home ended with J. Jonah Jameson saying this dude's a murderer. He killed Beck, whatever Jake Gyllenhaal's character's name was. Yeah. So they released the trailer for this, and you see Spider-Man Murderer, but it's the Sony Spider-Man. From the video games, which Sony probably had easier rights to put on the screen than the Marvel.
It's not the Spider-Man from the video games. It's the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man skin. It's the same image they used to promote that, like the same position. Okay. So it's that model with that skin.
Definitely have easier rights to that than the MCU Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm guessing all the other stuff that have been in these trailers since then could have easily just been Sony being like, oh my god, we've delayed this film for 2 years. Now we've got a new Spider-Man film that we need to play off of. Let's film some stuff that kind of looks like it's tied into that, or that teases more of this universe.
Yeah.
Because they originally were going to release this in January, right after No Way Home. So I could see them filming some stuff specifically for the trailer to kind of make it seem like it's a little more connected than it is.
Well, beyond that Spider-Man shot in the alley, the only other things that connected it to Spider-Man were the Daily Bugle shots that are still in the film, although I think some of the newspapers are different, and the Oscorp building, which I did not see at all in the film. Because
I didn't see it either.
People were confused because they had the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man on the wall. They had the Daily Bugle from the Tobey Maguire Spider-Mans, but the Oscorp logo from the Andrew Garfield series.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't see any Oscorp signs at all. So
right. Well, then of course the Michael Keaton stuff, which there's stuff in the trailer that's not in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
There's two mid-credit scenes for some reason that are both Michael Keaton related. I don't know why they couldn't have just been one scene together. But what did you think about those scenes?
Oh man. So Michael Keaton mentioned that he was going to film more Vulture stuff in like November on Jimmy Kimmel. And I'm pretty sure all of that was what we saw. I feel like they changed the plan of what the Sony universe is going to be. And they made up this weird excuse for why Michael Keaton is now in the, not in the MCU, but in the Sony Marvel universe.
It's not even an excuse. It makes no sense at all.
It makes no sense at all. Like, he's just here now. So you lose all the development of that character in Spider-Man Homecoming, where he has a daughter and a wife and a hatred for Tony Stark. Like, but now he's in this Sony universe where he can't say the Stark name, but he still remembers Spider-Man.
Is Stark? Is this implying that there is a Tony Stark in this universe? Because isn't his whole Vulture thing made from Stark tech? Didn't he make that all from Stark tech that he'd recovered over the years?
He made it from more of the, I don't know if it was Stark tech, but a lot of Chitauri tech.
Oh, from the cleanup? It was more Chitauri. Okay, well then even so.
Still, yeah, that's a whole nother can of worms. So like, how does he have his suit in the Sony universe now? Like, did he build a new one? Because
he's not necessarily an inventor. He just learned how to adapt the stuff that they pulled off the wreckage into things.
And
he didn't invent those things.
Even then, he had a guy doing it for him. So how does he have a Vulture suit in Sony's universe now? And why are they meeting outside of Las Vegas? Like,
right. And did he really film a ton of stuff? Because they don't even take off the mask. It just moves a little bit while he talks.
Yeah.
I
mean,
but there were scenes in the trailer of him that were not this.
Yes.
So I wonder if maybe the original version was just like, oh, it's him, but in this universe, it's just like this universe's version of him. You know, because the whole scene where he passes Morbius, or it looks like he passes Morbius, and he's like, me and you should meet up sometime, Doc. That's not in the movie. So
I wonder if at some point pre No Way Home, there was going to be a chance that Sony and Marvel's films were going to coexist in the same universe. And I wonder if something changed that Sony was like, no, you know what? We can go off and tell our own Spider-Man stories. Because the only way these end credit scenes make sense, the only reason you would name drop Spider-Man in a post-credit scene in a Morbius movie is if you're going to deliver a Spider-Man. And I feel like that's what they have to do now. Otherwise, what's the point of all of this? Like, if you're going to say Spider-Man in this, you need to introduce Spider-Man at some point.
What convoluted way are they going to make that make sense? Because while Morbius didn't say Spider who, it didn't look like he understood who Spider-Man was either. And Venom's whole thing, and at the end of Venom 2, where he sees Spider-Man on the screen, he seems to recognize him. But again, there's nothing in the Venom movies that suggests there's a Spider-Man in this universe. And I know me and you have talked about it before, that maybe they're going to somehow backdoor this into the Garfield movies. God, I hope that's not the case. Although I do want to see Garfield more, but it's just, I mean, it just feels like Sony's getting what they wanted. Like, the whole reason Garfield didn't get a third movie is because Sony was planning for ridiculous amounts of shit. And now it's just like, well, we just needed to wait a couple years, and now we're gonna do it. And I know it's easy to blame Sony, but again, I can't help but go back and blame Disney for not coming to the table a little more. Because how are you going to have a movie about Morbius the living vampire and not have one Blade cameo in the whole movie? I was waiting for that. I was like, look, this is not that great of a movie. It's not complete and utter dog shit. And I know I had a better time in this movie than the Eternals, so I'll give it that. I did not care for the Eternals. But I was expecting the same thing to happen. I was expecting a Blade-related cameo at the mid-credits scene, just like we got for Eternals. And we didn't get that. And I'm like, man, that is a crazy missed opportunity. I just feel like this film could have been better if Disney had a slight hand in it. Even if it wasn't as much as they have in the Tom Holland films. Like, they could help uplift these films to a better level than they're at, but they don't.
At this point, I'm still guessing what Sony's plan is for these movies. And I have no idea. Like, I would think each one would give us a better idea of what's happening in the next one to give us a clue of what their plan is, but each one just leaves me with more questions. Because this is supposed to be the same universe as Venom and Venom 2. So, and if Kraven's going to be in the same universe, that gives you
if that gets made. I know it was announced, but I think it's in production.
Really?
Yeah, let me double check. But
for some reason, I thought that was like pending the success of this film.
No, I think it's already. What's it? IMDb has it listed. Oh, they don't have it in production or anything. It has a release date of January 13th, 2023. I think they are filming that. So, because they just added Russell Crowe to the cast.
Oh, so, really?
Yeah.
I seriously doubt it's coming out in less than a year, but we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, crazier things have happened. Maybe it'll get pushed back 2 years like Morbius. But if you put all four of those characters together, that gives you four characters. Jared Leto wore a necklace to the Spider-Man No Way Home premiere that had a 6 on it. So maybe he knows what the plan is. Maybe they're trying to set up Sinister Six.
Well, he also did a huge interview where he just teased Spider-Man lore and connections to this so much. So either he was referencing things that were cut from the film or referencing plans that Sony has, because they name dropped Spider-Man in those mid-credit scenes. And I am always of the notion that unless it's a Marvel film, mid-credit scenes can easily be cut from the film, from future films. Like future films can straight up ignore what happened. Once the credits start rolling, it could be canon, but it could also just be forgotten about in future installments. But yeah, I was still surprised that they actually name dropped him. It seems like that's something that's always been alluded to, but never actually said,
Yeah. And that scene between the two of them in the desert was just so poorly edited, because I feel like they changed it at the last second. So I don't think Jared Leto is actually talking to Michael Keaton. I think he was talking to somebody else in that scene, and they put Vulture in there because it just, his reaction just didn't feel right for anything that he was saying. So I think they changed the dialogue there. I want to know what
they changed it. I think they just filmed it separately because he looks completely different than the rest of the movie, Morbius. I feel like they just hey, here's some lines. We don't necessarily know who's talking to you yet, and you don't know what the responses are, but just drive out, stand there, look interested, and say the lines. And then they filmed Michael Keaton stuff. I think it was just COVID filming, not them together. But it definitely felt like just tacked on. Yeah, it felt like no no real plan to it.
I mean, at least it was in focus, unlike his cameo in Zack Snyder's Justice League. So,
yeah. But speaking in focus, that final fight scene was so like I couldn't tell. Like there's a point where they're flying through the air, and I think the bad guy, which I can't remember his name, Lucian Milo, I think he grabs Morbius, like takes him through the street, and then maybe gets hit by a subway train, and then goes down in the sewers or something. But it's so like messy, and you don't see most of it. I was like, all right, this is just. It reminded me of the fight scene in Venom because the same thing happened. There's just a bunch of craziness, and the only time you actually see anything is when they slow it down.
Not to mention, I don't know if it was just my theater, but the film, like for that final sequence, was very dark. Like the only reason I knew it was a swarm of bats coming was because I could hear the bats. Like it just looked like a swarm of smoke to me because the screen was just so dark that I had trouble seeing the bats.
It was the same at my place, so I don't know if that was the screen itself or just the movie, but yeah. So they do the fight scene, and this is when towards the end, Milo's facial effects started looking a little poorer. Kind of started reminding me of Blade 3, actually, of like the Dracula face makeup. Like it didn't look as clean as it did earlier in the film. All the stuff towards that final fight scene was just kind of
it started looking like they just took the makeup from Buffy the Vampire Slayer and threw it on Matt Smith.
Yeah. Which is the same thing that was in Blade 3. I don't know if you've ever seen Blade 3.
I haven't. I haven't seen any of the Blade films. So yeah.
Oh, I need to come on your podcast and show you Blade 2 because you've got to see that movie, buddy.
Yeah. I do know. I don't know if you know this. Yeah. Did you know Morbius was in a cameo in the first Blade film that got cut?
What?
Yeah. So there was
I've seen that film so
there's
many
a final scene where like they're out on the like the final battle happens, and then they turn around and up on like a chimney is just Morbius the living vampire, and like it cuts to the credits. Yeah, I'll send it to you then. But yeah, that's a thing that got cut back in Blade 1 was Morbius, probably because Sony had the rights. So
yeah, but Blade 2 is probably one of the best early Marvel films of all time. Like that movie still slaps. It's awesome. Okay. Yeah, so the final fight scene was just lacking. It didn't really feel that great. And then Morbius Batman begins out of the sewer, and we see our FBI agent guys just looking up, and then that's the end of their story, I guess. I don't know why they it just felt like they were there for no reason at all. Like, the whole point of the experiment on open water was that there's no crime out there. So when they're asking the survivors of the ship, they're just like, yeah, we know you did something, but we're going to walk out of the room. And I just felt like that's because there's nothing to charge. And then these other deaths start happening. But then, I mean, like, they're just done. Like, they just leave. I don't know if that's setting up for them to be in the sequel or whatever.
I'm curious if that's like going to be their through line through some of these films. Like like having Tyrese show up in Kraven or Venom 3, whatever they do next. Like just have them show up from time to time to like connect them all. Because if at the end of this, like, where do you think Sony's going with this? Do you think they're going to do a Spider-Man movie in this universe, or do you think they're going to just do a Sinister Six movie? Or both?
Well, they named Spider-Man. If they're planning us to do a Sinister Six movie, holy shit, it's going to take forever to get there. Or they're going to start cramming in other characters as quickly as they... I mean, we got a Sinister 5 movie in No Way Home, and that was damn close enough. And I don't need a Sinister Six movie now. I really don't. And whatever Sinister Six they're going to put together, it's not going to be the classic six. It's going to be whatever Sony has the rights to and can jam down our throats in the next couple films. Yeah. So if their plan is to do an Andrew Garfield film with these villains, don't make it a Sinister Six. Just find a way to make it work. I like it's gonna suck. It's just gonna suck. But seeing Andrew on screen again will make it somewhat bearable.
Here's what I want to see happen. Like, I would love to see Andrew Garfield show up in Venom 3, because we have Venom back in his universe, knowing who Spider-Man is, knowing Peter Parker is Spider-Man, because theoretically he hasn't had his memory erased of Peter Parker being Spider-Man. So he knows the news reports. He was there for however long to watch the news and know Peter Parker is Spider-Man because he was there for that reveal. Have them do a movie where they fight, and then by the end of it, they kind of team up, and then maybe go up against these villains. Like, because I feel like Venom's more of an anti-hero, but I feel like if he worked with Spider-Man, they would work together, because you have Andrew Garfield talk about, like, I want to fight an alien, and
I know they're setting it up for sure.
Yeah.
But why? I still don't understand why. Like, if Venom knows who Spider-Man is, and their roundabout way is, oh, he connected to multiverses of Venom, and he can there's a version of Venom. Like, why would he want to fight Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, and why would Tom Hardy go with it?
Ignoring the whole Venom knows who Spider-Man thing is, I think Eddie Brock would be interested in who the Spider-Man guy is in his world. Like, if Spider-Man in this world that I got transported to when I was in Mexico was a murderer, like, what's this Spider-Man guy in my universe up to? Like, what's his real story? Like, if the Daily Bugle is printing stories about this Spider-Menace, maybe he's going to buy into that because he works for the Bugle, and maybe he wants to go investigate
did he get that in the bar when he was talking to Danny Rojas? Were they talking about Spider-Man being a murderer?
Well, when
they were just catching up on the MCU.
He was catching up on the MCU, but he was also, when he first comes in Venom 2, he has the news report on where Spider-Man's been revealed to be the murderer of.
Right, it was the newscast.
So I think it's going to lean more into Eddie Brock and his journalism curiosity than it will Venom's, like, knowledge of everything. I think Venom will have, like, a passing knowledge of, oh yeah, he has a sense, like something like that. But I think it'll be more about, it'd be more interesting if it was more about Eddie Brock learning about who this character is in this universe. I think that's a good way to establish, like, why he hasn't been in this universe at this point, how it works in this universe. I think that's, if I was Sony, that's the way I would go.
How would you guys like to help us get mental health resources into schools, conventions, and other events? Well, now you can. Simply go to patreon.com/victims and villains for as little as $1 a month. You guys can help us get mental health resources into current and upcoming generations, educate and break down stigma surrounding mental health, suicide, and depression. And you get exclusive content that you can't get anywhere else. And you guys can tell us which Nicolas Cage movie you want us to cover, and we'll do it. All it takes to get started is to go to patreon.com/victims and villains, or simply click the link in the episode description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this episode. Pick your tier and get started today. Yes, it's that simple. So quickly select the tier that you want and help us get hope into the hands of the depressed and the suicidal today.
I guess they could play more on he said he stopped pulling his punches, so maybe he's gained a more violent reputation wherever he's at. But it still feels like one of those weak plots where you're just like, just have a 5-second conversation, but we have to wait for an hour and a half for that conversation to happen, and then they team up. It's a formula that's been done a billion times over. But I mean, I'll be interested. I'll be interested to see a Spider-Man film with an alien and a vampire in it, and
Michael Keaton.
For some reason, Michael Keaton's Vulture. I really don't understand what he's going to bring to this universe that he couldn't have brought had he stayed in the MCU.
Yeah, and it really makes me wonder what the MCU is going to do now, because there was such good setup in Homecoming with him and Scorpion in prison, like teasing like the Sinister Six in that universe. And now that's just gone. Like,
right. Scorpion's not in this universe.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have a, other than knowing the name Peter Parker, he doesn't know anything about this Peter Parker. So it's not like he's going to be this brain of intelligence for this new group of bad guys, because this isn't his Peter. So I really don't understand the point of bringing him over. Like, I don't get it.
I don't know. Like, part of me just hope, like, part of me is just like, maybe Warner Brothers will be like, you know what? We need him as Batman. You can't have him as Vulture anymore. Like...
And why would Morbius be talking to him? Like, this film went out of its way to be like, no, Morbius isn't a bad guy. He's a good guy. So why would he be talking to him? Like, why wouldn't he just be like, you're clearly a bad guy. I'm a scientist that's misunderstood.
I don't know. Like, I'm just so baffled by... Like, at what point does Disney just buy out the Spider-Man rights from Sony? Or just buy Sony? Or just buy Sony?
Do it. Just do. And then it ended the same way as Venom 2 with the love interest now getting powers. Like, I knew that was going to happen immediately.
Yeah.
Didn't that happen at the end of Venom 2 as well?
Did it?
Or no, it didn't. No, it didn't. The cop got powers at the end of Venom 2. Not the love interest. But it was that same, like, tacked on thing at the very last second of the film. And they do it in this one too, with his doctor chick waking up with red eyes.
Yeah, the film, well, because they went through the process of making her a vampire. She drank his blood and then he drained her. Like, that's...
She bit his lip.
And got a drop. Yeah.
That was enough?
Yeah, evidently.
Wow.
Which, like, having a passing knowledge of how vampire lore works, like, I was able to pick up on that, but there's a point in the film where she's going over his notes where he's studying vampires and, like, killing them with stakes made out of crosses. You would think that they would address something. If they're going to do that at the end, they need to address that earlier on in the film, because Joe Schmo, who doesn't know anything about vampires, just is going to see this Marvel movie, is going to be like, wait, why is she alive again? Like, that makes no sense. Like, what did I miss?
And he left the love of his life on a rooftop, like, didn't even go back to, like, pick her up, or...
I don't know.
Like, he just left her. It's weird.
Yeah, the whole ending was just so, like, abrupt. Like, I got whiplash from it. So
the only thing, the reason why I put this above Venom 2, because I did say that in the beginning, this is above Venom 2. Because we got more development of the bad guy than we did in Venom 2. Venom 2 was literally bad guys in prison, bad guy escapes from prison, church fight, end. That's it. At least in this film, we got a little bit of the background of who the bad guy is. He's not, oh, my girlfriend is in another place. It wasn't something stupid like that. He gets his powers. There's an initial fight that doesn't go Morbius's way. He's killing people left and right. Then there's another fight. Mm-hmm. I like the two-fight structure. In Venom, it was literally like they fought and then it was done. Like, the movie was over. And I was like, the Venom's greatest enemy of all time gets one fight and then it's done? It's just crazy. Like, follow the basic Rocky formula or something. And they at least gave us a little bit more of that in this film, despite the crazy pacing. But I could appreciate the villain a little bit more in this film.
Yeah, and I think Matt Smith does such a good job of having a face you want to punch that I never really liked him to begin with. So,
I've never seen Doctor Who, but yeah, I can't imagine him being a good guy. Like, he just has that villainous face, and not just the face, but his mannerisms are always villainous. Like, was he just like the bad boy Doctor Who or something? I've never
No. His doctor's weird. His doctor is not my favorite. I'm a bigger fan of David Tennant. But since Doctor Who, he's pretty much been cast typecast as a bad guy. Like whatever he was in Terminator Genesis, I think he was supposed to play a First Order guy in Star Wars Rise of Skywalker that got cut. Last Night in Soho, he's pretty much playing a villain in that. And he's playing a Targaryen in this Game of Thrones prequel nobody asked for. So,
but I am excited about it because apparently they passed on one, and this one's coming, and I can't wait.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. Like, I'm still mad about the final season of Game of Thrones, but I already have HBO Max, so I'll watch it.
Right. I think maybe it's because Benedict Cumberbatch exists, and he's catching all the good, skinny, long-faced British roles. That Matt Smith just has to be the villain.
Yeah.
More often. I think if Benedict Cumberbatch didn't exist, maybe Matt Smith would have more good guy roles.
Well, I mean, to be fair, like all of the Doctors have been cast as villains in Marvel and DC because Christopher Eccleston was the bad guy in Thor: The Dark World.
That's right.
David Tennant was the bad guy
in
Jessica Jones. And then you have Peter Capaldi, who went over to DC and was the Thinker in the Suicide Squad. So.
Right. Wasn't he also a Loki in Loki?
No, that was somebody else. So
okay,
it was just another old British guy.
Look, I mean, I can't. We talked this to death. I didn't expect this film to be good, but at the same time, like I gotta say, like I remember looking down at my clock and saying, "Oh, we're about 28 minutes into this film, and I'm not hating it." I think the only reason why I don't like Venom 1 as much as most people is because I still cling on to that Venom Spider-Man story, and I just couldn't get on board with it. Like, I just had problems with the setup. But this film doesn't need a Spider-Man setup, and so I could accept it more. But in terms of the technical side of things and the lacking of plot and other things, I felt like it was on par with Venom 1.
Yeah. Yeah, like the Morbius story isn't as reliant on Spider-Man as Venom is. But if you're going to introduce him, like have him work with Vulture, who evidently is still like focusing on his hatred of Spider-Man, then like I just don't know. Like those post-credit scenes, like I kind of wish I left the theater at like the other people in my theater did, like right at the end of the movie, because it just makes no sense. Like I'm going to be questioning those post-credit scenes. I knew what was going to happen because Josh from Victims and Villains kind of straight up told me what was going to happen because we got dinner last week. And I was like, I guess
they leaked. Did
they leaked early. And so I knew that the director came out and said, like, this is why Michael Keaton's in our universe. We just kind of pulled him over. I'm like, that's dumb. Like, I hope that's not dumb. Right. And then that's what happened. I'm like, here we go.
So I wonder if there was a different mid-credit or end-credit scene in July of 2020. Because these were clearly based off the ending of No Way Home.
I think in July 2020, this movie was going to be in the MCU. Like, I think they were just going to... I think so. Because they're...
Vampires in the MCU?
I mean, we're getting a Werewolf by Night Halloween special directed by Michael Giacchino. So... Which I'm looking forward to talking about on this podcast as the Marvel correspondents.
We have better Marvel stuff coming up. Let's just say that. We got Doctor Strange on the near horizon. I can't wait. We've got Moon Knight. Are we doing I guess I never talked to you about that. Moon Knight dropped. Are we going to do like a weekly thing or a series thing?
We could do a series thing.
Maybe a mid-mark.
We could do a mid-mark. Right now, my schedule for the next month is a little bit crazy on Wednesdays, but so I don't know when I'll be able to watch them. But yeah, we can definitely talk about it. We can talk about it now a little bit. What'd you think of the first episode?
Better than Morbius. I love Oscar Isaac. I love
Oh,
everything that he does. And this episode was clearly a let's throw you into the fire, not give you a lot of answers. Let's get you confused, but let's get you interested. And I felt like, and somebody else said this too, and I was like, oh, I feel heard and I feel seen. I felt like this was the most premiere episode, the most pilot episode of any Marvel TV show we've gotten so far.
Yeah.
Like every other, like WandaVision, we didn't just get one episode, we got a couple episodes, and they kind of played off of each other. Falcon and the Winter Soldier, it felt like a part of a movie. It didn't feel like a pilot episode. The Arrow, why am I blanking on his name? Hawkeye didn't feel like a compelling first episode. In fact, Hawkeye was barely in it. It was more irritating than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
This felt like it was a pilot. Like it was supposed to throw you in there, give you enough information to kind of understand who the character was, and understand who the villain was, but not to understand anything at all, and then cut you off at a point where you're like, oh my god, bring on episode 2. And I really appreciated that. I really liked it.
Yeah, I think it felt more like a pilot because this is the first like series that we're getting about a new character that they're introducing through a series. So I wouldn't be surprised if Ms. Marvel has the same feel to it in its first episodes. But no, I'm really enjoying Oscar Isaac. I think Ethan Hawke's doing a good job as the villain.
I love Ethan Hawke.
I'm really curious to see where they go with the show from here, because I don't know much about Moon Knight, but I'm really excited to see what happens with it. So
and it's got money. Like they clearly put money into this show. There was a lot of stuff that if they did not shoot on location, I would be surprised, because a lot of it looked like location stuff.
I'm wondering if they're starting to use the technology that the Mandalorian's using.
Even if they are, some of that just looked too good.
Oh yeah.
Like, it looked really good. And granted, there were still some like, oh yeah, that car is clearly CGI when it goes off the cliff, and there's still a lot of that, but and it was a good length. It wasn't it wasn't like a full hour, but it wasn't a half hour either. It was like a good length for a starter. Sometimes we've gotten some of these Star Wars and Marvel stuff on Disney Plus, and you're like, come on, man, like that's barely a half an hour or barely 25 minutes. Like you couldn't have given like a couple longer shots to just pad out the runtime. This was great. It didn't pad out anything. It gave us a lot and gave us not a lot at the same time, and I really liked it. I thought it was great. And it got me excited because I know two of my favorite directors, Benson and Moorhead, are apparently involved in this show somehow. I don't know if they just directed like one episode or if they directed a chunk of episodes, but they were like, when they were announced, it was a pretty big announcement, and I was like, yes, I love those guys. So I can't wait to see what they're going to bring to it. But I really liked it. It got me really excited.
What else have they done?
They're mostly known for indie film called The Endless. But they've also done Synchronic, which came out in 2019, that stars Anthony Mackie, the Falcon. And then they did some other stuff. Spring is another one they did, and Resolution. They've done these indie projects that are, and She Dies Tomorrow. They've done these indie projects that are really weird and really out there, but really like good from a writer's perspective. And I really liked it. Synchronic was like the biggest budget movie they've done, and then right after that, they were announced to be a part of this show. So,
awesome. No, I'm excited to see what they do with it. I just have so many shows streaming right now that it baffles me. Like all my shows are like back. So I've got Moon Knight, I've got Picard season 2, Halo just started on Paramount Plus. It's a good time to be on the internet. So
his new shows, I've been watching Severance on Apple, which is just like this crazy show from Ben Stiller that is just crazy. Crazy. I love it so much. And then I think Jared Leto has a new show on Apple TV as well.
Yeah, We Crashed with Anne Hathaway about WeWork.
Yeah, which I kind of want to watch that because that was a very interesting story, the WeWork story. So
yeah, it's a crazy time. Like I'm finally done watching. Like I went through and watched every Best Picture before the Oscars on Sunday, So now I'm
wow.
like getting caught up on like all the TV shows that I was behind on. So it's it's
plenty of content.
Oh yeah, plenty of content. Plus, I'd have to start watching stuff to get ready for Multiverse of Madness. So
that's true. It's true. That's right around the corner. So we'll be. I'm guessing if we don't, we'll either do like a mid-season Moon Knight thing next, and then probably a Doctor Strange thing.
Well, yeah, unless there's anything that you think we should do in preparation for Multiverse of Madness.
I'd be up for whatever if you want to give me an assignment.
Yeah. We
because I'm sure there's plenty of things I can catch up on.
Yeah, I mean,
get ready for that.
we did a countdown of our favorite. We ranked everything from 2021 for the show. Do we maybe want to do a ranking of Marvel films outside of the MCU? Like our top 5?
That's a lot. Like, how far you want to go back?
Like back to Blade.
Well, then you would have to watch Blade because I can't. I can't entertain a conversation with you without you watching those movies.
Well, we could just
they launched so much.
We could just have you on my show to talk about Blade. That would work too.
I really want to be on your show, but to talk about Blade 2, not really to talk about like Blade's okay.
Well,
Blade 2 is like God level.
I would do the homework and watch Blade 1 so we could talk about Blade 2.
Oh, then bring it on. I would love to do that.
All right, so we'll have a victims and villains.
Many members of that film.
Yeah, well, who directed that one? Blade 2.
Guillermo del Toro.
That's what I thought.
Blade, yeah, which is why it's so good.
Say less. Like I'll probably go watch Blade now.
Yeah.
Anything else on Morbius? I was struggling to come up with a mental health moment for this. In my mini review, the best I could come up with is like Morbius has these physical ailments that are visible to people on the street. Mental health isn't always that way, so be kind to one another because you never know what somebody else is going through because you can't always see it on the surface.
Okay. My mental health moment would be I've spent the last 3 weeks hearing nothing but hatred for this film on Twitter, and while I am to the camera telling you it's not a great film, I paid $6 for it and I was perfectly fine with it. Like I had a good time.
Yeah.
And I think my mental health moment would be like, just, don't try to hate everything. Just like know that it's set expectations and try to enjoy life in those parameters. It's not going to be an MCU film, so try to set parameters in your brain that it's a Marvel film that's not Kevin Feige related, and you might still be able to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And that's what I would say. Like, don't spend money just to go hate on a film, but I think it's worth a watch, even if it's not like primetime Friday night, expensive IMAX ticket watches.
I'm going to Baltimore this weekend and I have to kill like 6 hours. My plan was to, maybe I'll just go see Morbius in IMAX. I'm kind of glad I didn't do that because that would have been a waste of my time in Baltimore. So,
yeah, I agree.
But it was definitely worth the matinee price. If you like Venom, I think you'll enjoy this film.
I would agree with that statement.
Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, I think that pretty much does it for Victims and Villains. Make sure to, if you're watching us on Twitch, hit that follow button. Visit our website, victimofvillains.net, to find all our mental health resources, more reviews, and information on the Horrific Hope Film Festival happening in just 1 month in Winchester, Virginia. We will be screening 2 days worth of short films, feature films, all horror focused and mental health based. Some of the films look great.
Some of them.
Yeah.
Some of them are really good. I haven't seen all of them, but they were the ones that I've seen. I'm like, yeah, that's cool. It's good stuff.
Everything looks good. The Alamo in Winchester is fantastic. It's going to be a great time. So hope to see you there. Tickets are on sale now. Josh, where can people find you on the internet?
on the internet. That's where they could find me. Twitter. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Victims and Villains. It just dropped a couple new. Finally doing screeners again for Victims and Villains, so you'll see me pop up on their site for a few more movie reviews. Otherwise, fiercelit.com. I've got a lot of tour dates for the book coming up. We'll be at Planet Comic-Con here at the end of next month, and a few cons throughout the week, or throughout the weekend, throughout the summer, until New York comes back around, and then hopefully I'll be teaming back up with you for that.
If everything goes according to plan, that is my plan as well. So I was going to talk to you about that after the stream, but yeah. So
where can people find you?
People can find me on Instagram at acram4815. You can also listen to my podcast, which we were talking about. You Have to Watch This podcast here on Twitch and wherever you get your podcast. Each week, me and my co-host make each other watch movies that one of us hasn't seen, except for this week, where since I won our Oscar poll, I get to pick a film that all of us have seen, and we are going to be talking about Galaxy Quest on First Contact Day. So,
ooh, I can't wait for that. That's gonna be good. I love Galaxy Quest.
Yeah, it's going to be.
That is one of my. If I could wish for anything, I would wish to see the R-rated version of that film.
Oh,
I know it exists, and I want it so bad.
I've seen the clip of Sigourney Weaver dropping the F-bomb. Like it's in the documentary, and I need to I'm going to watch the movie, and I'm going to watch the documentary, just to prepare for the show. But that's the R-rated movie I want, and I also want to see the R-rated version of Mrs. Doubtfire. So.
Oh yes, that would be great too.
But
good taste. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that does it for Victims and Villains review on Morbius. And we will see you soon for our Moon Knight review and anything else Marvel that comes up in the near future.
All right. That's good.
In the words of Dr. Fraser Crane, good mental health.